Hey folks, welcome to my world. It's Dominique back here with you, and I sure hope that today you can actually hear what I'm saying, because isn't that helpful when you're listening to a podcast? I mean, I think so. So, again, apologies for last time. Unfortunately, we had some sort of an equipment malfunction. Everything was plugged in, and the speakers and microphones were sourced, and yet we came through with absolutely no sound, so I do apologize to my listeners for that. We're obviously, as this podcast grows, we're kind of outgrowing some aspects of how we used to do the show. For instance, we don't always do an intro when we're doing a live show, although the intro will be edited later, just because I am working a little bit more with the soundboard and with the, editing of it all. And so I hope that that's not something that is making anyone go, you know what, I don't want to tune in. But let me know what you think as the podcast continues to grow and as we continue to move forward and grow into our new platform, whatever that may be on a given day, week, month, year. So thank you for listening, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And let me know what you think as we continue to move along and as we outgrow old ways of doing things and grow into the new. Now today, we're going to kind of get back to our roots a little bit, and we're going to be talking about female narcissists. Now, I do want to just assure everybody up front that this is not a show that's going to be bashing women. I don't appreciate women bashing. I don't appreciate men bashing, and that's not the kind of thing I'm trying to do here. So, it's not going to be bashing women. We are going to be pointing out some differences, though, between women and men in terms of how cluster B personality disorders like sociopathy and psychopathy and narcissism present. And there are differences, not just gender differences, but like differences in, I believe, the sexes, like how it looks on a woman, how it looks on a man, and correct me if you feel I'm wrong, but I think that there are some, and Annie believes, obviously, right, Annie, that there are some real differences in how it looks as well as how it's presented and how it feels and how it sounds. So, let's talk about female narcissists. Firstly, let's go with some of the similarities. Let's get some of those similarities out of the way. I would say that any narcissist is somebody who's going to be on the selfish side. They're going to be somebody who is self-focused and not necessarily a self-starter, not a self-motivated person who, has good boundaries and good relationships, but somebody who is self-focused to their detriment, who is so self-focused that everything else falls by the wayside, and that it affects their lives and the lives of people around them. And of course, they are also incapable of empathy, just like all narcissists and sociopaths out there. They're incapable of empathy. They can't be taught empathy. They simply don't have the capacity for it. They can be taught how to act, but they can't be taught empathy. And so I guess I'm of two minds when it comes to people asking me the question, should they go to therapy or not? Well, I mean, it might be a helpful skill, I should say, in terms of them returning to the workplace and being able to be a bit more appropriate with people and respect people's boundaries a bit. But both in the workplace and at home, it's a double-edged sword, as is everything when it comes to narcissism. Folks learn unhealthy coping strategies along with the coping strategies that are healthy that they get in therapy. They learn unhealthy coping strategies like how to use healthy language to manipulate people. And that's really not what healthy coping language and healthy coping skills and healthy boundaries are about. They're not They're not here to manipulate people. They're here to protect, in the way I see it at least, they're here to protect us as human beings, as individuals. They're here to protect ourselves. They're here to protect our rights as humans, those inalienable rights that we've been endowed with since birth. If you're an American, you believe that, and I certainly do. I guess I have a little bit of a Jeffersonian perspective on that everybody has. And you know what? I think Adams would take issue with that. Okay, a Jeffersonian and Adamsian perspective on that. Sorry, John Adams. I would say that, we all do have inalienable rights, like the right to seek our own contentment. Happiness is not necessarily the word I would use, but I do like the term pursuit of happiness that Jefferson wrote in the Constitution. And I think that our Bill of Rights is obviously really important because it does speak to our what things we can expect in life and what things we should expect and what things we should integrate into our boundaries, and sort of an American sense of wellness, if you will, and psychological health and happiness. But other than looking to constantly be happy, I would agree that the pursuit of happiness is important, and the contentedness and contentment is important. And those are things that everybody has a right to. Everyone has the right to enjoy a certain level of quiet enjoyment in their home, for instance. Everybody has the right to their physical safety. Everybody has the right to mental health care and physical health care, and everybody has the right to their mental safety, which is where I think the importance of getting the information out there in the world here, and I hope I'm helping to do that, in terms of narcissists and sociopaths comes into play. So, assuming we all do have a right to mental wellness as well as physical well-being, that kind of rubs right up against the goals of narcissists, doesn't it? Because their singular goal in life is to look, okay, I'm going to be real, I'm going to use real language right now. Their singular goal in life is to make other people feel like absolute shit. Okay? It's true. You can take that one to the bank because that is absolute truth right there. Now, as far as some of the differences go with female narcissists, I think a lot of that actually, other than the physical perception of somebody of a different sex, right? Other than that physical perception, I think that a lot of the differences lie in gender. I think a lot of the differences lie in gender and gender identity and sort of gender politics, if you will. And on that point, I think that's why female narcissists tend never to outgrow their mean girl stage. They never outgrow it. Folks, really important to remember. If you dealt with a mean girl in high school, junior high, hell, today even grade school, if you ever dealt with a mean girl, that's what a narcissist is, okay? That's what a female narcissist is in particular. You've got a good idea for what a narcissist is and what they do and why. So, female narcissists never outgrow their mean girl identity. And I suppose that that's a logical progression for them. Because, stay with me on this, when you're, about 8 years old, you start cementing who you're going to be in concrete functions in your mind for the rest of your life. So concrete functions come or start usually at about the age of 8. The sense of who you're going to be starts at about the age of 8. And so your personal identity begins forming around the age of 8, changes again at about 12, 13, 14 years old. Depending on the individual, depending on their sex and gender, depending on how they've been raised, depending on their innate abilities. And then before you're 18, you start forming a sense of separate identity outside of your family, right? Outside of your family of origin, even outside of your friend group. And it's at that time that these narcissists get this skewed sense of identity. And so their preteen and teen years are really an important milestone in their development, as they are in all of our development. But for them, it's a milestone in their toxic development. It's a milestone in toxicity. That toxicity becomes cemented, if you will, at that time. And so while I don't want anybody, feeling too sorry for narcissists and sociopaths, like, for instance, feeling so sorry that it affects the way that you deal with them or feel about yourself in a negative regard, I do think that a certain level of, empathy for them is appropriate, because these are people who will never enjoy life the way that you and I do. They will never be able to enjoy life the way that you and I do. They are stunted emotionally. Sometimes they're even stunted physically. Female narcissists especially. And they are people who just truly will never be happy. I think empathy is an integral part of happiness, don't you? So these people will never be happy. So I think that the whole 75% figure, that 75% of narcissists are male, is actually a little bit biased toward both women and men, and people of all genders in between, really. It's biased toward all sexes and genders because it presupposes that men are more capable of calculating behaviors and calculating states of mind. And that's simply not the case. Why would that be the case? There's no evidence to support that. That's not true. So really, 75% of narcissists are not men. I think it's an equal 50-50, folks. Let's not get carried away there. So if you're studying psychology or what have you, and you're hearing that 75% figure, no, it's not true. Discard it. At least question it and say, wait a minute, what's going on here? This doesn't feel right, because it doesn't, right? It doesn't. That cannot be correct. I think that they, as I mentioned when we first started this show, they just present differently, and we need to adjust our expectations, and we need to adjust our standards a touch. We need to adjust our standards, and we need to also keep in mind that, unless that person's coming to us for therapy of some sort and wants a diagnosis, we can't diagnose them. But we can track behaviors, and we can track the presentation of said behaviors, and I don't think that those statistics line up when we're honest about the behaviors that we're keeping track of, and how they present, and what they are, and when, and why they present, why they come forward. I think that women are equally as narcissistic as men. Men are equally as narcissistic as women. It's not really something that's more dominant in any of the sexes or genders, and I think we ought to abandon that fallacious thinking. That's just silly. Now, unfortunately, with female sociopaths and narcissists in particular, not only do they have that sort of mean girl mentality, because remember, folks, they're unable to mature. They just don't have the ability. They can't. It's beyond them. Feel sorry for that. If you're going to feel sorry for anything, feel sorry for that. So, not only do they not mature, and they can't, not only can't they integrate their empathy, because they don't have any as they grow older, but they have this need for unhealthy competition And so they're extremely competitive, but not the way that a healthy person would be competitive. They have really this just unhealthy desire, okay, for congratulations and for recognition and to be the center of attention, and sometimes taking on more than they can reasonably accomplish ends up being their downfall, depending on, of course, on what type of narcissist or sociopath they are. But oftentimes them taking on too much can be their downfall. Now, of course, taking on too much can be anybody's downfall. I take on quite a bit myself, but I also don't take things on just for simple recognition. I'm not interested in recognition in that regard. If I've really done something well and people appreciate that, then that's great. But I'm not here, obviously, nor is any healthy person just here for recognition, for that material sense of recognition, that sort of empty sense of recognition. And unfortunately, this really plays into that sense of relational aggression that female narcissists seem to have a corner on the market of. They really have cornered the market on like female to female relational aggression. And not only have they cornered that market, but they have relational aggression with men as well. It's just slightly different. Sometimes it's a little bit underplayed. It's a little underhanded. It's a little bit less obvious. But with women, they feel so jealous of other women that they have to have a competition. They cannot help themselves. And one thing that really foils them, folks, and one thing that they just absolutely hate is when the other woman won't play into it. That makes them look like the ass in the situation. That makes them look like the ass. That makes them look like the jerk. And it makes the female or females who are not playing into their crazy, of course I'm using crazy in the colloquial sense here, look like people who are rising above adversity and who are being healthy and doing the right thing, which they are. But even given how obvious that state of affairs seems to those of us who are healthy, the narcissist can't help it. The female narcissist cannot help it. And this can also be her downfall. Now, narcissists never stay down for long. They'll either try to reinvent themselves in the same place that they currently operate physically. Like, let's say that there's there are, but let's say that we're talking about a female narcissist in Chicago, right? Here in the Chicago area. And let's say that person just gets kicked in the hiney, 1,001 times, and they finally decide, okay, this strategy isn't working for me. They'll either reinvent themselves in another profession, start another relationship, go to another office in the same profession, and try to play their super fun mind games there, or they will simply pack up and move. And a friend of mine recently, we were talking about this, and he said, are they not aware of social media? Are they not aware that, you can't just pack up and move and become, a different person? There are ways of tracking where people go and what they do. And, the public can even see some of these documentations. And I was like, no, they're aware of it, but they just can't help themselves. And that's the thing with narcissists. They can't help themselves. They're a slave to their inner monster. They're a slave to their inner demons. And they're certainly a slave to their emotions. Oh my goodness. Yeah, emotions give us strength, those of us who are healthy. But boy, emotions really throw narcissists for a loop. And they're going to be the source of their own downfall at some point. But until it happens, it can be really painful and irritating for those of us who experience it, right? So the best thing you can do, and I know this sounds like somebody telling a bully, or someone being bullied rather, that they should just ignore the bully and they'll go away. But it's not that. But I'm going to say this, and I hope you'll keep that observation in mind when I do. The best thing you can do is not to ignore the narcissist and they'll go away, okay? Not that, but something similar, okay? So you don't want to ignore them. They're not going to go away. But if you don't react emotionally and don't play their game and don't let them drive you down the road that they want to push you down, they lose. There's no way that they can win. If they are trying to make you angry, don't be angry. Or, go be angry in private. Don't be angry with that office or friend group. Don't be angry on social media. Don't be angry in the office. Don't be angry, at home or in the house with the narcissist, right? Just don't respond the way that they want you to respond. And of course, you can kind of cook up your own plans privately, but don't respond the way that they want you to. Playing dumb is also a good way to go too. When you're talking to narcissists and to the, the flying monkeys that they cultivate, it's really important to be a very good communicator. It's very important to revisit facts. It's very important to go ahead and, explain things that you might think are obvious to everyone. Because when a narcissist has someone spun or is trying to spin someone, the one thing you can rely on is the fact that nothing is obvious to the target of the abuse. They've been spun, okay? That's what we need to keep in mind. They've been spun. And narcissists don't just spin the targets of their abuse or the personalities they're trying to cultivate as support personalities, as I call them, but they spin their audiences, or they try to do so. One thing we need to remember with narcissists, particularly female narcissists, is that they're always speaking to a greater audience. Even when they're speaking just to us, they are working a plan, they're working an image, they're cultivating an image, and they've got some shady stuff going on. They've got some ulterior motives in play 100% of the time. So remember that. And don't play their game. Make them play yours. So important. So important. They do tend to try to drive people apart, whether it be folks working together on a project in an office, whether it be folks in the political world, whether it be folks who are friends with one another. They will try to drive a wedge between those people or those groups of people. And what they want, all a narcissist ever wants is, for you to be looking somewhere else. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Oh, no, I'm not over here. No. Go look at each other. Fight amongst yourselves. No, it's not me. What? Are you kidding me? Me? No, I'm the nicest person ever. What do you mean? No. Go. It's her fault. Go fight with her. That's their thing. That's how they operate. Okay? That's how they operate. And that's what we have to keep in mind. So when somebody is essentially telling you, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, you can be damn sure that they're behind the manipulation. You can be damn sure that they have it out for you. So when somebody, a narcissist, not like a healthy person, when a healthy person says, yeah, I don't know anything about that. I'm sorry. Did I talk badly about you? No, I didn't. I love you. I'm sorry that you think I did. When a healthy person says that, you might want to consider believing them. But when somebody who exhibits signs and symptoms of narcissism says that, you can pretty much believe that they're 100% behind all of the shenanigans. So they thrive on sabotaging relationships and stirring resentment and causing chaotic reactions. It's just, it becomes so obvious and so rote when you kind of live in this world and deal with this stuff day in and day out. But for those of us who don't, I guess it's really not that obvious. Or so my friends tell me, like, all the time when they, report a situation at work, for instance, and I'm like, well, obviously that person is a sociopath or a narcissist. So, here's how you need to deal with them. They are like, oh my God, I never thought of that. And then they'll go back to work or what have you, do what I said, and the problem disappears. So obviously it's not that apparent to those of us who maybe don't deal with this kind of thing every day, but that's why I think it's important to put the word out and to get the information out there and to take away the power of the narcissist and of the sociopath. And that's really my goal, is to help take away the power of those toxic personality types. Of course, as we all know, any narcissist is going to idealize. That's going to be the first stage, idealization. Oh, I want to be your best friend, let's braid each other's hair. Hey, let's go to the movies. Let's talk about cute guys. And it's good, but it's going to seem forced. With a narcissist, nothing ever seems quite natural. Even their sense of quote unquote charisma it comes across as false. If you really are honest with yourself about it, perhaps you really just want to like this person. Oh, they're so charismatic, they're so interesting, they're so funny, what have you. But if you're being honest with yourself, there's something off about the interaction. There's something off about them. And it's just, folks, it's so important to be honest with yourselves about this. I cannot stress this enough. I have definitely given people too many chances in the past myself, found out that I was dealing with a toxic personality type. My clients do it all the time. That's why I have a business, unfortunately, but I really am here because I want to help people and I want to take that power away from the toxic people and abusive people out there. Now, it's something that you've got to listen to your gut instinct on. You really have to listen to your gut. When your gut is telling you, oh, so-and-so is so charismatic and interesting, but there's something off about them. Please listen to that. It is so important that you listen to your gut. Because your gut instinct is, I happen to think it's probably some combination of, your subconscious telling you what's going on. It's a combination of your subconscious. It's a combination of some sort of extra sense that maybe we haven't discovered yet. That's my feeling on the matter. You don't have to take that check to the bank and cash it, but that's what I think. My opinion. And it's a physical feeling too. And our subconscious kind of integrates all of those things together to make what we call a gut reaction. And sometimes we even physically feel that reaction in our gut. That's why it's called a gut reaction. Surprise, surprise. Interesting twist. But trust your gut when you first come across someone like this. When you first meet someone like this, trust your gut. It is so important. So important. So, as I mentioned, you're going to go through that if you're being targeted, or you're going to notice if someone else is being targeted that they're going through this idealization phase. That's what is going to happen first. Idealization. The sun shines out of this person's, bum, and they can do no wrong. And oh, this person is so perfect, says the narcissist. Until all of a sudden, you just don't hear much about the person at all, and then you start hearing some really negative things about that person that they used to be so enamored with, and then all of a sudden they're enemies, and you're like, well, that took a weird turn. What happened? I thought you were friends. That's how the situation goes. It's a spiral, but it's also sort of a predictable sort of Ferris wheel of events. you just keep repeating the same circle. You don't go anywhere but in the same circle. You're retreading the same ground over and over and over again. So, when you're on your way up on that Ferris wheel, it's so exciting and so interesting. And when you get to the top, you can see the whole world and it feels great and you've never felt better. And then when you start coming down, you're like, okay, well, my stomach is dropping here. I don't know what's going on. I'm trying to get back to the top. I liked that feeling when I was at the top. What happened here? But you can never quite get back to that zenith that you first experienced with them. You can never quite get back that first sort of high that you experienced with that narcissist or sociopath. And it's just really important not to play into their cycle of events. So it might feel good when they're idealizing you, but don't forget who you're dealing with. Don't go with that. Don't forget both who and what you're dealing with, ever. Whether you're in the idealization phase, the sort of plateau phase, or whether you're kind of coming down from that bizarre circus-like relationship, don't forget who you're dealing with. Don't play their game, make them play yours. And you can. There are a lot of people out there that will tell you that you can't make them play your game, but you can. You have all of this information, folks, that they don't have. Now, I'm not saying you need to out-narcissist the narcissist, but make them play your empathetic, real, down-to-earth, I'm a real human being with real stakes in life, and my life matters to me. Make them play that game with you. Make them play the game of life, if you will, as if they were somebody who did have empathy, and you will win every time. Now, you don't want to just seek out a narcissist to fool with them. That's never something I would advocate. But when you have one in your life that you have to deal with, that's what you need to do. Make them play your game. Never play theirs. Play offense rather than defense. They're going to want to put you on the defensive. Don't defend yourself. That's a trap. That's a trap. Don't ever defend yourself with them. Simply restate facts, pull them into your arena. Like, I'm not going to play on your turf, you're going to play on my turf. And here's how it's going to go. Okay, pull them into your arena and be proactive and be assertive. Don't stoop to their level. It's really important in this situation. I know it's hard, but don't do it. And like I mentioned before, playing dumb, not lying outright, but playing dumb just in order to get the basic facts of the situation out there is always the best way to go. So, a narcissist is always going to have someone to speak poorly about, especially a female narcissist. Folks, they're always going to have somebody that they're not getting along with. They're all even somebody that they purport to be friends with or to be close with. They're going to speak poorly about that person. They're going to speak poorly about that person, and it might. I mean, it's tailor-made to sound reasonable to you when they say it, but look past that and you will see the inconsistencies. They're glaring. They're right there in your face for everyone to see. And don't ever buy into their story. Just don't do it. And especially, I will say this, especially if that story is somehow appealing to you, if it's appealing to your ego, if it's giving you someone to blame for your problems, what have you, then that is a glaring, danger Will Robinson flashing sign that you can pretty much disregard whatever it is they're saying because it's bullshit. It's not true. So anything that appeals to your ego too much that they're telling you, or that wraps things up in a neat little bow for you, is pretty much guaranteed to be bullshit. Don't buy into it. Don't by it. I think there's sort of a feeling out there that narcissists, that female narcissists are these like femme fatale, oh, gorgeous people, but they're not. Like, let's move past that, okay? If we really are observing these people, they may be decent looking or nice looking, but there's always going to be something. They're never individual. Like, there's always, or they're so individual that it's a little bizarre. They're not going to be somebody who like fits fashion norms, and they're really not going to be someone who actually looks all that great. It's more the image they present that adds to their physicality, that adds to their physical presence. You may notice after you have finished up with that person, that narcissist, and you no longer have them in your life, that you maybe no longer see them as attractive. That's something that a lot of my clients tell me, and it's something I've tried to listen to, because I think there's a real message there. When your perception of that person changes, it's almost like this facade falls away, it crumbles. So perhaps there are some other things going on there. Perhaps they're always telling you how they're, wearing the latest fashion, or they did their hair or their makeup a certain way, and it's just so fashionable. And you're taking that in and integrating that into your reality. So perhaps that's affecting the way that you see them, right? Perhaps the image that they try to put out there is affecting the way that you see them. Most of the time, they're really not going to be all that attractive. They're not going to be genuinely beautiful, because my feeling is that someone who's ugly on the inside can never be genuinely beautiful on the outside. Someone who's ugly on the inside can do everything that someone who is beautiful on the inside does to look attractive to everyone else, and it just doesn't work the same way for them. That's my feeling. Again, you don't have to take that one to the bank, but that's my feeling on the matter. And I think it bears up under scrutiny, so let me know what you think about that in the comments. I'm sure you will. It's something that you should try to look for if you're noticing these other red flags. Look for look for those like very odd, strange, fashion choices. I'm not talking about like cultural differences or ethnic differences or something like that, but I'm talking about like strange choices. Perhaps they pair together outfits very strangely. Now, I'm not saying everybody that does that is a narcissist or a sociopath, but people who exhibit narcissistic qualities and do this, that's another red flag you can kind of collect and you can observe, and you can go, okay, there's something off about this person, right? So it's just another red flag for you, as if you needed another one. That, perhaps they look all right, they look decent, but there's just something off about them. Maybe their fashion doesn't fit with who they claim to be. Maybe their fashion sense is really strange. Maybe they're pairing items really strangely, right? Maybe they're doing makeup from the 1980s rather than from today. And again, I'm not saying that everybody who does that is a cluster B, but cluster Bs do this. A couple of the narcissists and sociopaths that I have come in contact with in my life have done this. They, one woman in particular that, oh my goodness, I'm seeing a woman outside with my exact same Kate Spade purse. Now that is a good fashion choice, not a bad one. She's not a narcissist. So, on that interesting note, I think you can look at people like the narcissist that I knew, and you can kind of just see the odd choices they make. Perhaps they're very stuck in their youth, in their sort of teenage years. Perhaps they don't update their style. Perhaps they always have the same haircut or the same hairdo. And it's just they make some odd choices. And I think that, in my opinion, is because they lack empathy. They just don't have that chip. They don't have the empathy chip, right? So you'll notice these physical signs as well. So I'm going to kind of disagree with that whole, narcissists are femme fatales and are beautiful and gorgeous thing. No, not so. But narcissists often will alter themselves heavily to affect the appearance that they feel corresponds with whatever persona they have put on today, right? So it's like they have a closet full of personas, a closet full of masks, and they just kind of pull one out as needed on an as-needed basis. And unfortunately, their style choices, because they're always trying to tailor themselves to look the way that they claim to be as human beings, their style choices don't match up. And you will notice this if you pay close attention. So one thing that all narcissists have in common, but that female narcissists really seem to have a corner on the market again with, is that they have no respect for anyone else's boundaries, for anyone else's life choices, for anyone else's opinions, feelings, even if somebody else is speaking fact to them, like, indisputable fact. They have no regard and no respect for that, and they won't integrate that into their personal reality. And as we know, a narcissist or a sociopath's personal reality never matches up with shared reality. It just doesn't. And that's one kind of red flag that I notice in my life. If somebody's personal reality isn't matching up with shared reality, there's a problem. If someone's personal reality isn't matching up with shared reality, and they exhibit some of these signs and symptoms, there's a problem. Okay? Good thing to keep in mind. So they're going to disregard your boundaries, they're going to disrespect your boundaries and your the way that you live your life, essentially. They definitely have, as we talked about before, no respect for your rights, those inalienable rights that everyone has. They have no respect for that. They don't give a damn about your rights. They could care less about your rights. But when somebody dares to disregard their rights and their boundaries, they will scream bloody murder at the top of their lungs to anyone who will listen. So, there's a double standard there. There's a major double standard there. I think that I have pretty much addressed how to deal with that narcissist once you sort of realize that you have this person in your sphere, in your life. I think that I have enumerated some good coping strategies for you. And we will definitely do a show that, again, in the future, that focuses on coping strategies and how to talk to these people and how to deal with them. But I will leave you with this. One thing that you never, ever want to do is confront the person by saying, "You're a narcissist and I know it." Not only can that be dangerous, because this person is somewhat unhinged, okay? So not only can that be dangerous, but it's going to lead to you being targeted. If you're not already being targeted, it's going to lead to you being targeted. And it's a shitty thing to say to another human, okay? Let's just be real about that. It's a shitty thing to say to another human. Don't say it. It's not cool. How would you like it if someone walked up to you and said something like that? So they do have emotions, they just don't have empathy. Don't say that. It's not helpful. And it's unkind and unnecessary, and it will hurt your cause. So don't ever confront them and say, "Hey, I know you're a narcissist." It's not helpful. But folks, I think that's going to do it for now. I hope that I have done a decent job enumerating some of the qualities that differentiate the female narcissist from the male narcissist. And please let me know if you have any questions. Let me know what your experiences have been in the comments. Thank you so much for listening. And you know what? Be well. You're not alone.